Predator on deck. Vexor stood on the observation deck of the Stellar Majesty, a gleaming luxury cruiser drifting lazily through the Andromeda sector. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd with the slow, deliberate focus of an apex predator considering his next meal. At 7 feet tall, with claws like serrated blades and teeth that could shear through titanium, he was a masterpiece of evolutionary lethality. Among his own kind, the Korak, he was considered a pinnacle hunter. Among the other passengers, he was that terrifying guy everyone hoped wouldn't sit near them at dinner. The cruise had drawn its usual assortment of pampered elites from across the galaxy, exactly the sort of prey Vexor preferred. Soft, comfortable, unfamiliar with anything sharper than a steak knife. Near the pool deck, a cluster of flins, gelatinous, jellyfish-like beings, wobbled in the sun, sipping neon cocktails through long feeding tubes. Too easy. Hunting them was like punching a water balloon, and they tasted vaguely of brine and regret. He turned his attention to a group of Zepians, crystalline bipeds whose faceted bodies refracted light into dazzling illusions. They could be tricky until you learned their light patterns. After that, they were basically overpriced paperweights with an attitude problem. The familiar thrill of selection built in his chest. Hunting was never just about the kill. It was about the art of choosing prey worthy of the chase. Someone difficult enough to be satisfying, but not so dangerous as to be a real threat. By the end of this voyage, he intended to add another trophy to his collection and another story for the Predator bars back home. There was always a bigger fish in the galaxy, but on this ship, he was certain it was him. Then he saw it. Sitting alone at a corner table on the promenade deck was possibly the least intimidating sentient Vexor had ever encountered. Small, barely 1.5 meters tall. No claws, no fangs, no armor, just soft, pinkish skin that looked like it would tear if the air conditioner blew too hard. The being was calmly reading a book, oblivious to the predator watching him. Vexor's gaze flicked to the cover, 100 Ways to Escape Alien Capture. He almost laughed aloud. The thing was so helpless it needed instructions to survive. Perfect. Vexor moved in, muscles loose, stride measured. This would be a quick warm-up before the real hunt. But when he drew closer, the creature looked up, straight into his eyes, and smiled like they were already old friends. "Well, hello there," the little thing said, voice warm and unafraid. "You're one of those Korak, aren't you? Impressive. Those claws. Do they stay that sharp naturally, or do you maintain them?" Vexor's brain stalled. In all his years of hunting, no prey had complimented his claws before. Most beings either screamed or started drafting a will. Before he could recover, the creature, Jake, as he introduced himself, produced a small container and held it out. "Trail mix. Nuts, dried fruit, bits of chocolate. I brought too much. Want some?" The apex predator found himself being offered snacks by his intended victim. This was new. A gelatinous flin. Quirk. Rolled up to the table, trembling so hard his translucent body quivered like disturbed water. "Vexor. Private word. Now." Jake just nodded and went back to his book, murmuring something about improvised weapons from household items. Quirk dragged Vexor a few meters away, his voice a nervous hiss. "Are you out of your mind? That's a human." Vexor shrugged. "Small, weak, perfect prey." "Small and weak." Quirk's voice pitched higher. "Do you know what they did in the Centauri conflicts? Built a fortress out of mining equipment. Tamed a predator species designed to be untamable. And the first thing they did with nuclear weapons? Used them on themselves." Before Vexor could reply, Lord Pompous, a Zepian glittering with smug self-importance, glided over, scattering rainbows across the deck. "Please tell me you're not planning to harm the human," Pompous said, his tone like fine crystal, sharp and cold. "They have an unnerving tendency to weaponize everything, including friendship." Vexor scoffed. "How is friendship a weapon?" Pompous tilted his head. On Kepler Station, a human befriended a Vorthan war chief. By week's end, The entire Vorthan fleet had defected. The human claimed it was just good conversation over drinks. Quark nodded rapidly. And their tactics? Ever heard of a human wave attack? They keep coming until you run out of ammunition or the will to live. And they're persistence hunters. They don't have to be faster than you, just more stubborn. Nothing in this galaxy is more stubborn than a human with a goal. Vexor looked back at Jake, still quietly reading and eating trail mix, looking about as threatening as a decorative houseplant. You're both paranoid, Vexor muttered, but even to himself, his voice no longer sounded certain. The predator who sat down, against his better judgment, and ignoring the frantic do not engage gestures from Quark and Lord Pompous, Vexor returned to the human's table. The human looked up with that same unsettling, relaxed smile. Hey, welcome back, he said, closing a small book. Your friends seemed a little agitated. Everything okay? They're not my friends, Vexor replied, lowering himself into the chair across from him. They're just concerned about interspecies relations. That's thoughtful of them. I love meeting new people. Well, new beings, the human said cheerfully. This is actually my first big galactic cruise. Usually I'm more of an outdoorsy type. Outdoorsy, Vexor repeated, trying not to sound curious. Yeah, hiking, camping, rock climbing, base jumping, shark diving, wrestling bears. He said it in the same tone most people use to list favorite snacks. Vexor's claws flexed involuntarily. You wrestle bears? Well, not professionally. More of a hobby. But I did place third in the regional alligator wrestling championships last month. Vexor blinked. Alligator wrestling? Oh yeah, they're apex predators on my world. Been around since before the asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs. Can spin you into a death roll before you blink. He pulled a small device from his pocket and started swiping through images before Vexor could object. The first photo showed the human, Jake, apparently, grinning with one arm around a monstrous reptile bristling with teeth. That's Snappy, rescue gator. Lost a leg to a boat propeller, so he lives at a wildlife preserve. Pretty gentle once you get to know him. Vexor wasn't sure which was more disturbing, the gator's teeth or Jake's casual body language. The next photo nearly made his secondary heart skip a beat. Jake sat astride a massive, fur-covered brute with claws like ship-hull rivet cutters. Kodiak bear. 800 pounds. Name's Mr. Waffles. Not my idea, park rangers named him. We have an understanding. I bring salmon, he doesn't eat my face. Then came a shot of Jake waist deep in ocean water beside a black and white behemoth. That's killer. Orca. 26 feet. 6 tons. Smartest hunter in our oceans. We met when I was doing underwater photography. Now he brings the family when I visit 12 other orcas. Pack hunters. Work together to beach prey, create waves, even launch seals for fun. Vexor's mandibles clicked softly. This wasn't prey. This was a creature that looked apex predators in the eye and said, let's hang out. And that's just my downtime, Jake said. My day job's a little more exciting. Vexor's voice came out lower than intended. Day job? I'm with the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We do peaceful first contact work, cultural exchange, conflict resolution. Something in the way he said conflict resolution made Vexor's survival instincts flare. The Terran Corps was infamous for negotiating peace by parking dreadnought fleets in orbit and asking politely if terms could be discussed. So, military, Vexor guessed. Not really. I mean, I have some training. Did a stint with the Marines before diplomacy. Service builds character, teaches survival skills, how to turn everyday objects into weapons. He lifted the book he'd been reading. This thing's about escaping alien abductions. Pretty basic stuff. Who doesn't know how to make a plasma cutter from a toothbrush and a power cell? Vexer realized, with cold certainty, that he had made a fatal error in judgment. He wasn't sitting across from prey. He was sitting across from the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, and it was offering him snacks. You know what? Jake said brightly. We should hang out more during this cruise. Most passengers seem jumpy, but you look like you're up for some fun. Vexer's throat made a noise somewhere between a groan and a deflating air bladder. Fun. Yeah. The ship's got a combat simulation deck, holographic hunts from across the galaxy. Or maybe the zero-gravity sports arena. I've been dying to try three-dimensional dogfighting maneuvers. The word hunt tightened something deep in Vexer's chest. Humans didn't hunt for necessity. They hunted for entertainment. For them, warfare was a leisure activity. Jake leaned forward, eyes alight. The key to zero-G combat is forgetting about up and down. Attack from anywhere. Turn your opponent's strength against them. It's all about persistence and adaptability. Vexer now understood why Quark had looked terrified earlier. Humans didn't survive by being the fastest or strongest. They survived by never stopping. And this one wanted a teammate. Vexer had thought he understood the human sitting across from him. At least until the conversation took an unexpected turn. You know, Jake began, leaning back in his chair. It really doesn't matter if your prey is faster or stronger than you. All that matters is that you don't stop coming. Ever. You keep chasing until they get tired, make a mistake, or just give up entirely. Give up entirely? Vexer repeated, his voice tight, as though the words belonged to someone else. Jake nodded. Exactly. Humans aren't the fastest or the strongest species in the galaxy, but we're ridiculously stubborn and adaptable. People say when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Humans? We look at anything and think, how can I turn this into a hammer? He casually picked up a decorative napkin from the table. Without even looking down, his fingers folded and twisted it into a surprisingly aerodynamic little dart. See? Not deadly, but sharp enough to sting. Put the right spin on it and you could take out someone's eye from across the room. It's all about knowing the physics and making the best of what you have. Vexer's mandibles clicked uneasily as Jake flicked the dart toward a waste bin. It struck dead center with a neat thunk. And that's just the basic stuff, Jake continued, smiling faintly. Back in my Marine days, I had an instructor who could drop a man with a plastic spoon. Not because it was sharp, but because he knew leverage and pressure points. Give a human the right knowledge and enough reason, and we can weaponize anything. Anything? Vexer echoed under his breath. Oh, absolutely. I once saw a guy take down an entire hostile squad using nothing but duct tape and a really bad attitude. We're basically the galaxy's most dangerous problem solvers. A situation might seem impossible, but we'll find a way. And we don't particularly care if the solution technically violates the laws of physics. Jake sipped his drink. Some bright, fruity concoction that Vexer now suspected was actually a potent human stimulant, and went on. That's why I like diplomacy. People think it's all about polite conversation, but it's really about understanding your opponent and finding creative solutions. Sometimes the best way to avoid a fight is to make sure everyone understands exactly why they don't want to fight you. Don't want to fight you? Vexer repeated, his voice climbing in pitch. Jake grinned. Take the Andromedan Trade Alliance. Last year they got aggressive about expanding into human territory. We sent a single diplomatic ship, small crew, peaceful mission. The vessel's name? Friendship. Cute, right? What they didn't know was that Friendship was actually a prototype stealth warship with enough firepower to crack a moon in half. We never threatened them. Just visited, had tea, talked about the weather, mentioned how beautiful their capital city was, and how awful it would be if something ever happened to it. They backed down. Vexor asked, though he already knew the answer. Immediately. Turns out most people aren't eager to negotiate with a species that sees mutually assured destruction as a perfectly reasonable strategy. We'll be your best friends in the galaxy, but threaten us or our allies, and we'll remind you why we're the only species that ever looked at nuclear weapons and said, let's make bigger ones. Vexor's eyes darted around. Other passengers were leaving, not just moving away, but actively avoiding the section of the deck they occupied. A group of Rigelian traders abruptly changed direction. A cluster of Centauri diplomats suddenly recalled urgent business elsewhere. Even the service staff were giving the table a wide berth. Jake, Vexor said carefully, are you aware everyone is avoiding us? Jake glanced around and chuckled. Yeah, happens sometimes. Humans have a certain reputation. Most species like us, but some of the more predatory types get nervous once they realize what we are. What are you? Vexor's voice cracked. Apex predators who evolved from prey animals. We're a walking contradiction. We look harmless. We act friendly. We share our snacks. But we also climbed to the top of a death world's food chain and stayed there. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Here's the part that really scares people. It's not that we're violent. It's that we're nice. We genuinely want to be friends with everyone. But if you threaten us or the people we care about, we'll end you, politely, and then help arrange the funeral for your next of kin. A cold clarity settled over Vexor. Without a single raised voice, without any direct threat, the dynamic had shifted. He was no longer the hunter. He was prey. Jake smiled warmly. And I've decided we're friends. Vexor tried to edge his chair back casually. Well, Jake, this has been very informative, but I should probably… Oh, come on. Jake's face lit with genuine enthusiasm. The cruise has just started. We've got 3 whole weeks ahead of us. I've already planned out some activities for us. Us? Vexor whispered. Yep. I came here hoping to meet interesting people. And what are the odds? I end up sitting next to one of the galaxy's most renowned apex predators. This is like winning the lottery and finding out it's also a holiday, Jake said, pulling out a sleek little scheduling pad and swiping through it with an enthusiasm that made Vexor's antennae twitch. All right, here's the plan, Jake continued. Tomorrow morning, combat simulation deck, 10 to 12. After that, zero-gravity sports complex. Oh, and tomorrow night there's a cultural exchange dinner. Perfect chance for me to introduce you to some human cuisine. Ever tried Carolina Reaper peppers? Peppers? Vexor asked warily. Yep, Jake grinned. We bred them specifically to cause pain when eaten. Delicious, fiery pain. You engineered food to hurt the consumer? Absolutely. Humans love that kind of thing. Capsaicin is supposed to be a plant's way of saying don't eat me. But we took one look at it and said, let's make this stronger and put it on everything. We've literally turned self-inflicted discomfort into a competitive sport. Jake scrolled with the focus of a fleet admiral planning an invasion. Wednesday, we've got a shore excursion to Kepler mining colony. I hear they've got creatures called razor wolves, pack hunters, can bite through titanium plating. Sounds like a blast, right? Vexor's voice was flat. You define this as fun? Oh, totally. And Friday night, there's a predator and prey themed costume party. I figured we could go as a pair. You as predator, me as prey. Then Vexor tried to rise, but his knees failed him. Jake, I appreciate the thought, but perhaps I should. Jake's eyes lit up. Almost forgot. There's a species exchange program where we share details about our home worlds. I brought a full presentation on Earth's ecosystem. For example, ever heard of honey badgers? Small, fuzzy, endlessly aggressive, and completely fearless. They'll attack something 50 times their size and won't care if they die doing it. Concentrated rage and bad decision-making, Vexor muttered, unsure whether Jake was still talking about animals. And that's just the start. I've got footage from Australia, which is basically nature's live-fire training range. Venomous, poisonous, sometimes both at once, and humans moved there willingly. Built cities on it. Advertise it as a tourist paradise. Jake began pacing, gesturing animatedly. Oh, team building. There's an activity where two people are handcuffed together and have to escape a locked room using only improvised tools. Builds trust, sparks creativity. Great fun. Vexer stared at him, realization dawning. He wasn't getting away. Not today. Not for the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks, as the reluctant best friend of the most dangerously enthusiastic creature he had ever met. The most dangerous friendship in the galaxy. This is going to be the best cruise ever, Jake declared, clapping his hands like a man who had just won a prize he hadn't even entered for. I can already tell we're going to be great friends. You look like someone who enjoys a challenge. Vexer rose to his feet unsteadily, his legs trembling as though they were contemplating mutiny. I need to send a message to my homeworld. Of course, Jake grinned. Family check-in, right? That's great. Family is important. Hey, you should invite them to Earth sometime. We'd love to have guests. I'm sure they'd love our wildlife. As Vexer staggered away from the table, Jake called after him, Don't forget, combat simulation deck tomorrow at 10. It's going to be amazing. Back in his quarters, Vexer sat before the comm terminal, claws shaking as he began typing to the Predator Council of the Corfac Dominion. Subject, Urgent Update Human Threat Assessment. Current intelligence is disastrously flawed. Previous reports categorized humans as minor threats. Diplomatically irritating, militarily tolerable. This is dangerously inaccurate. Humans are not merely apex predators. They are predators who have evolved past the need for survival-driven hunting. They hunt for fun. They kill for recreation. They have transformed suffering into a sport, weaponized friendship, and somehow convinced the galaxy that they are the reasonable ones. They are social predators with an unmatched ability to adopt outsiders into their pack. Once adopted, escape is impossible. This is not friendship. It is lifelong possession. He was about to transmit when the cabin door chimed. Jake stood in the hallway, holding a plate piled high with strange, sweet-smelling discs. Hey, buddy, I brought you some cookies, chocolate chip. Oh, and I got us matching shirts for tomorrow's combat simulation. Hope you like blue. Vexer stared at the cookies, the awful realization sinking in. His warning was already too late. The adoption had begun. His fate was sealed. Thank you, Jake, he murmured, accepting the plate. No problem, friend. Tomorrow at 10, we're going to have the best adventure. As Jake strolled away, humming what sounded suspiciously like a pre-battle chant, Vexer closed the door and added one final line to his message. Send help or don't. It may not matter now. In the quiet of his luxury cabin, one of the most feared predators in the galaxy sat eating chocolate chip cookies, contemplating how he had somehow become the domesticated companion of the most dangerous species in existence. The worst part? The cookies were really good.